Whether you're just heading out to see A Quiet Place or you just got back, I have a feeling that your audience reacted somewhat strongly. Positively or negatively, down in the comments, tell me what your theatrical experience is like seeing A Quiet Place. Hi everyone, I'm Adam Caesar. This is Project Black T-shirt, where every week I review at least one movie and then I pair it with a book that I think you should read if you enjoyed that movie. I'm a horror author who loves spreading the gospel of horror fiction. So if you liked A Quiet Place, stay tuned to the end of the video to see what book I picked to go along with it. Right up front, I want to give a little warning about spoilers. A Quiet Place is a movie that it's pretty difficult to spoil, especially if you've seen the trailers or at least know the premise, but if you want to go in completely clean, completely not knowing what goes on in this film, why are you watching like a 10-minute video on YouTube about it? Just go see it. It's really good and you'll enjoy it. If you're not completely spoiler phobic or you're on the fence and you want to talk about the movie a little bit, I'm not going to just blurt out the ending and tell you what happens in it, but we're gonna have to talk about things that happen in the first, second, and third acts a little bit, so I can't promise that this is completely spoiler-free. That said, the first scene in the movie is a monster attack scene. You don't know it's coming, but it's what happens. It's not a movie, this isn't an M. Night Shyamalan type film, although it has a lot of aesthetic sensibilities in common with Shyamalan's films, but this is not a movie that's trying to broadside you with like a big twist. It's a high concept monster movie. There are monsters in this movie. They are not kind of the emphasis of this movie, but they're there, and the movie doesn't kind of play coy with you, doesn't string you along. It shows you what you're up against pretty early, and then it's our characters kind of dealing with that and dealing with the aftermath of that. Which I think, especially in this day and age where it's tough to keep a secret and it's tough to keep people in their seats, for a movie that, for as tense and as exciting and as action-packed as parts of it are, it is a little bit of an ask. It's a movie where the premise is a family is surviving out in kind of, we don't really know where they are, but I'm guessing America's heartland somewhere because they're on a farm, and there has been some kind of invasion, some kind of appearance of these monsters that have decimated the population of the United States. And the only way they can come get you, they're completely blind, the only way they can come get you is if they hear you, if you make a sound. So everyone's got to be real quiet in this quasi-post-apocalyptic near future that A Quiet Place takes place in. Quiet Place stars John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, and if you hadn't heard by now, John Krasinski directs this film. A Quiet Place is a 90-minute movie that perfectly kind of has these three-act structure, act breaks. The tone and the way that the movie presents itself and the kind of way that things unfold are perfectly segmented into those three sections, so we can kind of talk about it that way. That first act, almost completely free of dialogue outside of American Sign Language. People sign. That wasn't a sign. I don't know American Sign Language. It is a movie that introduces this family. They have a daughter who is deaf and who has a cochlear implant. So there's kind of that reason for them to know how to use American Sign Language to communicate with each other once this kind of apocalypse happens. The movie is subtitled for this whole first section, which is, for me, seeing this in a theater, I thought it was excellent because it's a movie that is not any less commercial because it has subtitles. The crowd that I saw it with was vibing along with this movie, was kind of on their edge of their seat. And I feel like if it weren't American Sign Language, if there weren't a plot reason for them to be doing it, if the people on screen were speaking French, none of the people in the theater would have been there because it wouldn't have been given this kind of lavish release and it wouldn't be this big horror movie. So that's kind of the first act, is this tense, we're setting the rules of this world, we're setting the rules of how the monsters work, of what the day-to-day life is on this farm. The second act is where things start to go wrong, and it's a lot of kind of, if you've ever played the board game Mousetrap, it's a lot of brilliantly set up little set pieces that are choreographed, like, okay, I know how this thing works, and I know how this is going to influence them, and I know what's going to happen here, but it never feels like anything's overly coincidental. It never feels like anything is just because the screenwriters wanted it to be there. It feels like very organic, and it feels like you're this little clockwork. One big set piece is basically the middle section of the movie. It's just basically one big set piece. and it's so well done. That little chocolatey nougat center is definitely my favorite part of the movie, is that middle section, because it's amazing. It's amazing. And then maybe something that I was a little less vibing with, but the movie is still incredible. The movie's still great. The ending, you get a little bit more of a, I would almost say like Aliens, or it's more of a monster movie. Characters making big, sweeping, heroic gestures and sacrifices, and it's the movie that we saw in Act 2, kind of with the volume dialed up to 11. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It sends you out of the theater happy. It sends you out of the theater thrilled. But that middle section where everything is kind of effortlessly and subtly given to you through just purely visuals. There's really not much dialogue in the middle, and it's just really great. Quiet Place is a movie I really liked. That's why I'm talking about it ad nauseum. One thing I will say about this movie is that it has a real heartland warmth, especially to the beginning. Even though these characters are in dire circumstances and that the movie is very, very tense, there's like beautiful cornfields and like a very agrarian society they've kind of built. This family has kind of built for themselves, this little Swiss Family Robinson existence they have. And I think that warmth is why the second and third acts work so well, because you see, like, they kind of, like, it's not like they have it good. It's not like this is a preferable life, but there's something to it. There's something to kids sitting around playing Monopoly. There's something to just a nice kind of family existence, which is what they have for that little portion. Speaking of that family existence, there's a crucial scene, and I think if this is going to be a movie that gets unpacked, and there's going to be think pieces about it, and there's going to be a lot of different back and forth, there's especially going to be talk about, at least I think, I can already feel Twitter twitching, that this is somehow a conservative quote-unquote movie. I don't mean necessarily politically. There is, you know, John Krasinski as the father, Emily Blunt as the mother, and there's some subversion of these kinds of archetypes, but there is that like man in the man's role, woman in the woman's role, and it's not like I'm making this stuff up. It's kind of is text. He's like, John Krasinski is the protector, and Emily Blunt is very much the maternal figure, the nurturer, and they talk about like the preservation of that, and they talk about like wanting that to continue. So I think that's going to be something that people start discussing about this movie. And the way that it, I think a little bit more positively, and the people are going to be talking about it a little more positively, is the way that it portrays disability. It is a tiny bit of a plot contrivance to have a deaf character as kind of one of our main, if not our main, POV characters in the movie. Especially the way that things shake out involving her disability. I'm going to be interested to see what people take away from this and what people say about it. And if you guys have any thoughts about any of the things that I'm kind of spitballing, ideas that I'm talking about here, talk about it down in the comments and be nice to each other. The monsters themselves are very cool, if not a little bit familiar. Like I talked about Alien, they meets the monster from Cloverfield, but they're kept enough in shadow, and we see them in little glimpses enough. John Krasinski knows kind of not to oversaturate them, not to make us kind of tired of them by the time the movie's over, and we get a lot of cool close-up shots of like the inner workings of like their ears and like these vicious kind of cool teeth they have. I like them. I thought they were cool. One last thing about A Quiet Place before we move on to the book recommendation. I don't usually talk about directors for photography, but I really have to give a shout out to Charlotte Bruce Christensen, who is a Danish cinematographer. She worked on The Hunt, the Mads Mikkelsen film. She worked on Fences with Denzel Washington. I think her cinematography and her director of photography skills are a big reason why A Quiet Place kind of resonated with me, and why that American heartland warmth, that imagery works so well. Her and John Krasinski, wow, dream team. Let them make another genre movie, please, because it would be really great. So if you liked A Quiet Place and you want a book recommendation to go along with it, a longtime subscriber has been asking, when are you going to talk about a Brian Keene book on the show? Adam, when are you going to talk about a Brian Keene book on the show? And today is that day. We're going to talk about The Conqueror Worms, also known as The Earthworm Gods. That's the title it's currently in print under. This is the old leisure paperback version. This is a book I really enjoy. This is a book by Brian Keene that I feel like is, in some ways, got that paperbacks from hell kind of 70s and 80s animals attack feel to it, but also in a lot of ways is that high concept monster story like A Quiet Place is, because it is earthworms. This cover is the silliest thing you've ever seen. The new one's a little better, but I'll put the links down in the description as I put the links to everything that I talk about on the show. It's a really fun book. You'll kind of breeze through it. If you're familiar with Keen, it's a good one to check out. If you're unfamiliar with Keen, I think it's a good one to start with. If you like this video, please hit like. If you really like this video, please consider subscribing and checking out my other videos. As I mentioned, I am a horror author. You can find links down below to my website where I have free samples, free stories. You can check out my books on Amazon. Please review them. This week's special shout out to voice actor Jason Hill and his program Horror Hill. He just did a really nice recording of my story. Please subscribe. And if you really want something meta, I'll put the link for the YouTube video of that. It's about a half hour, about an hour show in length because he does 2 stories. Yeah, it's fun to listen to, and if you haven't listened to my work or if you want to hear someone else read my work, Jason does a really, really great job, and it's a fun show. All right, that's it. I'll see you next Friday. Have a good one.